Moving on from the last example, it's such a difficult skill to differentiate between types of positions which are just slightly worse, bad, and dead lost. I mean, I really think it is a grey area in chess, and it's a question of intuition and judgment as to the decisions you take in each types of position. But there are definitely positions where I think the most important element of defence is called into play here, the necessity to find counterplay at all cost. And what I mean is distraction when I mean counterplay. For instance, just let's take a look at this next game, Taimanov versus Larsen. This game was played in Vinkovci back in 1970. And it's a dramatic example, really, of surprising counterplay in what looks like a very bad position for Larsen as black. Of course, Larsen was a great opportunist, chess-wise. He always sought to play for a win. He was willing to take risks in order to do that. He was willing to take uncompromising decisions in the middle of games in order to increase his chances of playing for the win. As we will see here, as black gets into trouble in what looks like a very quiet variation of the Queen's Gambit. It started life as a Nimzo Indian. It's transposed back into a line of the Bishop f4, Queen's Gambit. We don't have to know too much about the theory, so I'm playing through the moves fairly quickly here. Suffice it to say that black is getting into a small mess here, and after Queen b3, white is now starting to put the pressure on the isolated Queen's pawn. So let's try and summarise what's happened so far. Okay, black has inherited an isolated Queen's pawn. Now, the theory for the isolated Queen's pawn is fairly standard. I mean, you probably know what it is because you're advanced players. If you've got the isolated pawn, you've got to develop freedom of activity to compensate for that pawn. Casting our eye around black's position, I don't see a great deal of activity. Do you? The bishop on c8 is tied down to b7. It seems hard even to protect the pawn on d5. And d4 by black here looks like a very unconvincing sacrifice. I mean, it'd be okay if black could say check on e8 when white captures on d4, but he can't even do that. So, basically, Larsen is on the ropes already. Now, you might say, well, he's only slightly worse. Maybe he should try and tough it out. And that might be true, but I think this position is so bad for black already against a player of Taimanov's class that black has basically got to find something extraordinary in order to try and hold this position. I mean, I can just see this as a long grind where black is just defending the whole game through. And, for instance, if he plays rook d8, we go queen b5. This is just a horrible position for black. And it's going to be a nightmare game, isn't it? There's going to be no fun in this game. You've got about a 20% chance of holding it. And, you know, white's going to have all the fun. I mean, that's not chess in my view at any level. And Taimanov and Larsen, you have to remember back in 1970, these two guys were at the pinnacle of their careers. Both of them were of course, involved in candidates matches against Fischer a little later down the line. And so they were fighting for the spoils. And Larsen just came to the decision, well, I'm going to try to look for counterplay at all costs here. And he came out with a quite extraordinary move, g5. Now, the point about this move is that obviously Taimanov couldn't have been expecting it. Who would be expecting such a move? Black lashes forward in front of the king. He seems to make a random stab at the bishop. But of course, white hasn't castled yet, extraordinarily. And black's idea is to get on the case before he does so, with g4. All the same, it's very hard to believe that this isn't going to lead immediately to black's defeat in a horrible way. But you see, Larsen's changed the emphasis of the game. From a calm positional struggle, where white was just expecting to grind out the victory, now he's got to think tactically about the position. And even strong grandmasters might not be able to make that readjustment in the middle of a game. Well, here's the first sign that Taimanov has been shaken by Larsen's move, knight d4. I think what white should have played here is simply to go knight e5, when he retains his advantage, as far as I can see. I think there Larsen was probably planning to go bishop f6. Takes on c6 might be the best move for white castles. But you see, the position's changed somewhat. Now the weakness in black's position is his c6 pawn. In return, of course, he's gained a certain freedom of movement with the bishop on c8. So black has got his counterplay together by these strange means. Moreover, white isn't really in any position to take advantage of the weakened black king just yet. So going back to the game, Taimanov played knight d4. Black took on d4 and now played bishop g5, again harrying white with threats to his rook. And now white made a very strange decision. I mean, I think he'd been so shaken by black's play that he lost all his rationality. He castled, sacrificing the exchange. He obviously felt to himself, well, okay, let's see. Let him give up his dark square bishop, then I will get in around his king and take him out. Well, bishop g5 has achieved the desired effect. Of course, instead of castles, what white should do is just to play rook d1, just protecting the pawn. If rook e8 check, probably just king f1 and maybe play on in this position. Going back to the position after bishop g5, rook c2 is also a move. If rook e8 check there, rook e2. Again, after rook takes e2, king takes e2, bishop e6. Black has got his counterplay, but white might be slightly better in this position. Castles, however, well, Larsen took the rook. Rook takes, bishop e6, and now h3 was the move white had in mind when he sacrificed the exchange. He assumed that once black played g takes h3, the g file would open up and he would be able to get after black's king. Bishop e5, f6 by Larsen, very good. Knight e4. Well, nice little combination from Taimanov, but unfortunately Larsen already had a good reply prepared to it. F takes e5, queen g3 check, and now the remarkable move here, bishop g4. A fantastic deflection which keeps black's advantage. Just going back, if black had played king h8 in this position, then queen takes e5 check, I think, would have won. King g8, queen takes e6 check, king h8, queen e5 check, king g8, and now rook c3, with the crushing threat of rook g3. But bishop g4 is just a tremendous move. As I say, it deflects the white queen, king goes to h8, knight comes into g5, and now beautiful move, queen d2. The combination of attack and defence in one go. Black's attacking the rook, he's attacking f2. Well, if rook f1 in this position, black also shows that he's got yet another string to his bow by taking on d4. Queen threatens mate. The black queen finds herself very, very versatile in this position. Black could even play king g7 after knight f7, and then queen f5, forcing exchanges and then forcing the win thereafter. So, going back to the game, rook c7 was played. Okay, we can understand this response, but of course it allows black to take on f2 and then g2. And once all the pieces come off here, this should be an easy win for black. Well, Larsen wrapped up as follows. Final interesting point in the game as black has allowed rook takes h7 check, king g8, and now rook takes b7. Rook c2 is a good move, threatening rook f1. Knight h3, holding the queen in square, rook f1, knight g1, and now the switchback rook f5, forcing victory. This would be counterplay all the way, and, well, black's idea of rook h5 followed by rook h1 is not to be denied. So Taimanov, going back to the game one more time, took on b7, rook comes into c2, knight f7 check, very cool from Larsen now, e6, the king rides out, and now this beautiful move, g1 equals queen, manufacturing a check on g8 and the subsequent capture of the knight. King f1, king takes f7. So that was a superb game by Larsen, really, and the moment where the game turned, we go all the way back, was here, when black played g5. That move, very original cast of mind to play. Larsen sensed that the position was going against him. He knew that he was going to be condemned to a long defence, so he found the only method of counterplay available to him to shake Taimanov off the scent. He played this extraordinary move, g5. So my main point overall is that the essence of defence is counterplay. In your games, you've got to try to cultivate judgment. Which positions are bad, which positions are lost, then you can do what you like, and which positions are worse, slightly worse, or as here, condemn you to passivity the whole game through, unless you find the right method. Defence is a really important aspect of chess, and the stronger you get, the more important it becomes, because you're going to be playing really strong players and they're going to force you onto the defensive from time to time, as you are trying to do to them. So do consider defence in your training regime. Do study defence as a matter of priority.